Hygiene is one of the key attributes of our health and personality, and ignoring it will eventually lead to becoming a social outcast or deterioration of health. That's probably why hygiene products and practices are a lucrative industry today. Everyone has their individual hygiene habits, some of which may require unique specialized products like special shower lotions, face creams to tackle skin problems, hair strengthening shampoos, and more. Hygiene, however, is not a modern concept. Humans throughout history have been carrying out many beauty and hygiene practices. While most of these were effective and could be logically justified, some will just make you scratch your head in confusion. A lot of the remedies used in old times seem like a crime against the human body today. In this video, we'll introduce you guys to some bewildering methods which people used in order to maintain cleanliness and enhance their beauty. So make sure you watch it till the end and don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Let's begin. Tinctures of Lead. The internet nowadays is full of unbelievable beauty hacks that somehow work, but always remember trends are not always healthy. One such trend involving lead tinctures was a health hazard people inflicted upon themselves in old times. In modern times, a healthy tan is often regarded as a sign of beauty and health, but this wasn't always the case. Only a few centuries ago, tan skin was frowned upon in aristocratic circles, and it was thought that only the people from lower social classes would have tan skin. Farmers working under the scorching sun were supposed to have tans, not the upper class that inhabited palace-like homes and had servants to do literally everything for them. This urge to distinguish themselves from the poor led the affluent people of society to choose pale, elegant skin. But this wasn't always easy, as you can't shield yourself from sunlight all the time. Therefore, these people resorted to special methods in order to maintain the pale complexion. Even Queen Elizabeth I of England fell victim to this mentality. She used an extremely harmful and downright bizarre mixture of lead and vinegar to achieve her radiant white complexion and to ensure her look stood out amongst the masses. The pock marks were also covered using this method, but little did the Queen or other nobles know that lead is extremely poisonous and its contact with the human body should be avoided and minimized at all costs. Thankfully, modern science was able to knock some sense into us by informing us how harmful lead really is. Back in the day, people used it for many reasons. This metal had become a common presence in human lives, but now we know that there's no place for lead in beauty products and anyone using it should be stopped. Arsenic against pimples. Arsenic is another known carcinogenic agent nowadays, but people were not always aware of its adverse effects. In the 19th century, anyone suffering from acne could buy sponges enriched with arsenic in hopes of getting rid of their pimples. The cosmetic industry thankfully prohibits the use of this toxic substance today. Initially, it wasn't as strictly regulated as it is now. Back then, arsenic was considered a safe beauty product that could be used to achieve a fair and even skin tone. These arsenic-containing sponges did actually help get rid of skin impurities and improve the acne, but this was actually because arsenic killed the blood cells of the user. Prolonged use of the substance developed dependence of the skin on it. This meant that if you stopped using the product, the acne would return and it would be worse than before. This led the user into a vicious cycle in which they were slowly poisoning themselves just to keep the skin clear of pimples. Arsenic is an extremely toxic poison that can cause dire health problems if it enters the body in large quantities. It's naturally present in certain fruits, including apples and pears, but the quantity is negligible in these, so it's harmless. But the same cannot be said for rubbing large amounts of this poison on your skin. Bedpans. We've all been in the frustrating situation of having to use the loo after we've made ourselves comfy in our beds, ready to fall asleep. However, we have no choice but to get out of bed and relieve ourselves. As it turns out, though, previously people had found a different and quite gross solution to this problem. Bedpans are now exclusively used in hospitals, but not long ago these were popular utensils for normal people at home. People back then didn't have to get up and walk all the way to the toilet at night. Instead, they would just relieve themselves in these containers and get back into bed. As unhygienic as it sounds, we can't deny that this was normal practice. A lot of the times, the bedpan with its contents would then be pushed under the bed where it remained probably until the next day when someone would clean it up. Those who didn't want to sleep with their refuse under the bed would just tip it out of the window. During those times, people were not educated about the pathogens and disease they were exposing their streets to. Besides the germs, this horrible practice also caused the houses and streets to smell terribly. Thankfully, this method is now out of practice. Hygiene in the Baroque. Does anyone know why people used to wear big flashy wigs in the 17th and 18th centuries? This popularity of artificial hair in the early Baroque era can be attributed to the disease that we call syphilis. It's a chronic infectious and sexually transmitted disease. One of its symptoms is hair loss. Louis XIV of France was also a victim of this disease that led to hair loss, therefore forcing him to wear wigs. Soon after, artificial hairpieces became a signature of the higher society. It was soon hailed as a key part of aristocratic fashion. However, not everyone was allowed to wear a wig. In fact, there was a wig tax introduced in Prussia during 1698 and 1717. The lower classes were forbidden to powder their wigs. This wig frenzy was soon met with the problem of stink and itch because of a misunderstanding. The people in the Baroque era were of the opinion that harmful organisms like the plague were transmitted through bathwater, so they gave up using the bathhouses and even stopped bathing. Instead, they would just spray themselves with perfume from head to toe. Instead of immersing their bodies in water, they used fine soap and a cloth to rub their bodies clean. The wigs also came with a problem of lice, and that's not it. There's even a report that once a mouse had built its home in a Baroque wig, and the owner never found out until a lot later. Besides lice and mice, fleas also found a cozy home in these wigs. Flea traps were used to get rid of these and were often attached to the petticoat. Dubious flooring. Rush, an ordinary plant with about 300 subspecies, was used quite often for many different purposes long ago. The perennial grasses were often used as flooring in the past. This seemed like a simple environmental-friendly solution for homes, but it turned out to be the breeding ground for all sorts of creepy crawlies. Using this grass to insulate the homes seemed harmless initially, but soon enough people found that it brought about pests of all kinds, providing them a safe space to nest in the floors and walls. This was a serious health risk, leading to many diseases and infection outbreaks. This was because leftover food and feces would pile up over time. Disgusting, right? Many times the floors were not replaced for years. The grass was just an easy solution at that time for people who would not bother replacing it unless it was necessary. It was almost like modern carpets that should be replaced every 5 to 10 years, but some people don't bother changing the carpets for many decades. Similarly, the grass was supposed to be replaced every few months, and leaving it untouched for years on end was bound to cause terrible odour and pest infestations. When the king has to resign. Life in old times centred around fixed rituals. However, not everyone was allowed to take part in these ceremonies. You had to be of a certain status to be included. The dukes, barons and counts who were present during the morning rituals of the king considered themselves lucky. Imagine feeling fortunate because you could assist the ruler on his visit to the toilet. A whole crowd of courtiers would gather around as the king relieved himself, and as crazy as it sounds, this was an integral practice in courtly life. A royal walk to the hamlet was quite intimate during Middle Ages. It was reserved for the groom of the stool in Britain's royal houses to support the monarch while he was in the toilet. This special courtier was supposed to always keep the toilet chair at hand and to wipe the royal rear end clean after it had finished its business. It was no doubt a humiliating job by modern standards, but during that era the groom of the stool was quite an important man. He was considered the closest confidant of the king, and therefore quite a few of these chamberlains rose in ranks quickly. It was considered a great honour for the entire family if someone was appointed groom of the stool, as it meant they would soon become a highly influential person. Black smile. We're all aware that dental hygiene is a vital part of our cleanliness regime. Brushing your teeth regularly not only keeps them healthy and white, but also prevents foul odour and disease. But before the fresh mint-flavoured toothpaste was a staple in every household, dental hygiene practices were a tad bit different. Prophylactic dental care was not even remotely prevalent. For instance, let's take a look at Elizabeth I, who lived from 1533 to 1603. She wasn't just fond of skin-whitening tinctures, she also had a sweet tooth and was a huge fan of sweets. Therefore, her teeth soon got ruined by tooth decay and began turning black. Now, this might make us frown nowadays, but back then this too was a symbol of wealth and superiority, as only rich people could afford to consume large quantities of sugar. Thus, the stubs in the rulers' mouths led to this questionable trend. In hopes of looking rich, the woman began intentionally blackening their teeth using various methods. It's crazy how beauty trends were truly opposite in the past. People actually sought tooth decay in hopes of appearing wealthier than they were. Technically, things aren't as different today either. Many try their level best to seem richer and happier and more successful than they really are. After all, how else would they showcase their lives on social media? Urine as a universal weapon. As shocking as it may sound, there once was a fluid that was not used just to wash clothes, but to soothe blemishes on the skin and relieve inflammation. Don't be shocked if we tell you that we humans create this product. You guessed it right, we're talking about human urine. The use of urine became popular in ancient Rome, where it was used for quite some time. The Romans considered human urine a miraculous product that could serve many purposes. People during the Middle Ages used their own urine to wash clothes and disinfect medical instruments. This may seem insane, but there was some logic behind this practice. The ammonia found in urine does actually help remove stains. Besides that, urine was also a commodity that could earn you money. This was because tanneries required the liquid to process their leather. Therefore, urine was collected and sold to relevant shops. Nowadays, we can't even imagine coming in contact with urine, especially if it's not our own. But in those times, it was common practice, especially because people had no other way to synthesize ammonia. Nowadays, we have cleaner ways to process leather and washing powders to help clean clothes, thankfully. These were some of the worst hygiene practices from the past. Do tell us in the comments which one grossed you out the most. For us, it was definitely the bedpans and urine use. We'll be back soon with another amazing video. Until then, have a great time and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Goodbye.